Welcome to Ripple Effect Connection. I'm your host, Christy Hugic. Throughout my own journey, I've been blessed to form deep connections with incredible souls who've enriched my life with their insights. Today, I'm excited to extend these connections to you, bridging the gap between impactful messages and inspiring messengers. On this podcast, with the help of my guests, we're set to explore a diverse range of topics, delving into nutrition, fitness, holistic health, and the power of mindset. Our goal is to ignite transformative discussions that create a ripple effect of positive change in your life and the lives of others. Today, I have the privilege of welcoming a true luminary in the world of golf and fitness, Randy Myers. We could spend all day looking at his accolades because when it comes to golf and fitness, Randy is one of the best trainers in the country. He fills many roles and is currently the director of fitness at Sea Island and one of the founding members of the Titleist Performance Institute. He's the director of Nike Golf Performance and an innovator who has been front and center in the world of amateur, professional, and recreational golf for over 30 years. He's trained many of the world's best golfers across all tours, including major champions Davis Love III and Brian Harman. He's also been an integral part of recent U.S. President's Cup and Ryder Cup competitions. You will be amazed at what goes into the fitness and nutrition preparation for a 3-day biennial event like the Ryder Cup. But Randy's impact isn't just on the game's elite players. He has also devoted his time and energy to shaping the future of golf by training over 600 juniors. And for those of you who are passionate about golf, no matter what age or level of the game you compete in, or even if you're a parent of a rising junior, this episode is a goldmine of insights and knowledge waiting to be shared. Randy has been a professional inspiration and was always someone I looked up to during my journey to becoming a personal trainer. You're in for a treat, so let's get to it. All right, Randy, thanks for taking time out of your busy day to join the podcast. It's great to have you.
Well, it's great to be here, and thank you for coming to Sea Island and visiting us and getting to play a little golf.
Yeah, getting to play a little golf. And just so you know, full disclosure, I am on a full belly of Southern Soul as we sit here. So
that is one of the iconic stops, certainly at Sea Island, as everyone knows.
Well, I know that you have a lot to offer the listener, and the challenge for me will be not to keep you too long, because I know I could ask you 1,000 questions and go on forever. But I want to start right now by getting into the average person. I know you work with a lot of different athletes and professionals, especially in the game of golf, but I want to start with the age bracket that seems to have a lot of conflicting information that I see. I mean, I've gone through it myself where I'm like, gosh, I don't even know what to do sometimes anymore. So there's a lot of conflicting information out there for the 50 plus age group. Protein intake later in life, balancing strength with cardio. How much do I do? How much is flexibility important? So how would you advise someone who's trying to evaluate what's right for them?
You know, that's a great question. I've been doing this. This is my 33rd year training golfers, but also athletes. And I think the biggest question mark that most people who get into their recreational senior golf days, male and female, is exactly where do I begin? And what differentiates a specific movement for golf versus a movement for just health. In general, if someone is doing nothing, what you want to do is start slow. And I would say that the slow process means 5 minutes a day, 10 minutes a day, starting to stretch before you play, beginning a program where maybe you're doing some foam rolling and then using some tubing, which is a very inexpensive training aid. From that point on, if you are already working out or with a trainer and you're trying to specialize, the thing I would suggest is to really make sure that the trainer you're working with or the fitness program you're involved in is complementing what you're trying to do in your golf swing. So for a woman who has a lot of flexibility but doesn't have a lot of speed or wants to gain distance, I would say they need to make sure that they're doing some strength training, comprehensive movements, strengthening their weak side, and then also working maybe on some speed sticks or working with the stack system to gain some speed. For men in general, flexibility is an issue. They start to become limited in their ability to turn and losing hip speed. So we would focus more on the aspect of weight transfer, balance, and then also gaining some more mobility, particularly in the shoulders, because when you look at what tour players do from a shoulder perspective and how much turn they're able to get, I would say only probably 1 out of 10 men properly turn. So the swing's flat, and when it's flat, then you have lateral motion, and then it's a hit or miss. So I know that's a little bit of a complex kind of answer, but start slowly, no matter what you're doing, and then try to balance out your existing plan with something that would be more golf centric or balance oriented to help you prolong the game, because it's a lifetime game. I talk to people every day and say, your objective should be breaking 80 at 80. And then someone will say, well, I've never broken 80. Well, that's still a good objective. Or I want to shoot my age, well, that's a great objective for an elite player. So the game always brings you back. There's always going to be 1 or 2 phenomenal results, whether it's good fortune or whether it's actual skill. So you want to build that up. You want to build stamina so you can play more often when you retire. You want to be able to practice, because that's a big deficiency for most recreational golfers. They just don't have the stamina and strength to practice.
I think people just don't always understand that in order to continue to do something you love to do, whether it's pickleball, golf,
bicycling,
tennis, cycling, running, God knows the runners who do nothing, we know what happens, kind of to them. It is so important. Like, I hear all these pickleballers that are getting injured at where my parents live, and I go, well, if they're just running out there and doing nothing else and playing pickleball, that's exactly what's going to happen. So do you see that across the board? Do you feel that's accurate?
Yes, it is. And again, the body's 3-dimensional. I always use the explanation of like in a Rubik's Cube, right? So you might be able to get one side with all the white on it, but the rest of it's all jumbled up, right? Or if you turn it one way, you might have 2 lines that look good. But the point is that in general, because of gravitational pull and our life today, which is, you're hanging over a computer, I'm standing over or sitting over a mic, most people do not get themselves symmetrical. And what ends up happening is you have an injury and then you become less symmetrical, and then we're fixing another injury, and then you're having a joint replaced, and then you've got back issues. So, Tiger Woods, is probably without a doubt the most phenomenal golf athlete I had seen in my career. And Tiger will even tell you he was not symmetrical enough. As a kid, he was super pliable, like a string bean that could turn. He got older. He really wanted to get stronger. He did. In that process, through some of the training, he ended up being injured, and it wasn't necessarily golf-centric. But I always think about this. If Davis Love and Tiger Woods can get injured and have issues with their joints, any golfer could have some problems. So if you want to play better golf, or any sport, make sure that you're training in all 3 planes of motion. So you got to be able to move laterally. You got to be able to move sagittally. You got to be able to move in the frontal plane. You got to be able to twist and turn. So I know that sounds simple, but with the computer technology and online information, there's tons of information out there. All you got to do is Google search whatever, and you'll find 50 exercises. As a matter of fact, the one final thing in this question is, during COVID, when the tour kind of shut down and everyone was scrambling for stuff to do, we had a bunch of guys doing all kinds of crazy sports. They were bored. And these are high-level athletes. And we had all these guys getting ready to go back to play who were all banged up. And I was like, well, what were you doing besides lifting? Well, some were, going on 20-mile bike rides. Others were playing tennis, pickleball, shooting basketball, playing squash. And so even elite golf athletes who don't cross-train end up injuring themselves doing other things. So if you want to play pickleball, I would definitely say stretch your calves, your hamstrings, or you're going to tear something up, right? Plus, there's that 1% DNA in every athlete who says, I can get to that ball, or I can hit that ball harder, and the next thing you know, you got something you're trying to fix. So 3-dimensional training. We call it functional training. That term didn't exist until the last probably 20 years, but basically, you should be able to do everything you do right-handed, left-handed. And if you can do something with your left leg, you should be able to do it right leg. One other thing that's interesting, and it's just a side note, is the reason why professional golf athletes are so good at hitting a golf ball long distances is 3/4 of them are ambidextrous. Yeah. They throw lefty, they hit righty. Brian Harmon throws righty, does everything righty, and plays lefty. You go down the list, a majority of the the players that I work with do something with their non-dominant side. They could be left eye dominant. So train yourself to kind of get, your body more balanced out.
Yeah, I used to, when I grew up, I would always eat with my left hand just because I played basketball. I kept just trying to do things with my left hand to try to get that feeling that you're talking about. And I think the thing that I think about from history that I wish I knew when I was growing up is the fact that we can fix imbalances.
Yeah.
Corrective exercise, when I trained to become a trainer, I was like, gosh, this all makes so much sense. And we didn't always have that, growing up with. So these athletes have a lot of things at their disposal right now.
Well, yeah, no question about it. I mean, I recall going, in the mid 90s to a lot of colleges that I worked with and trying to educate their strength staff on why golf is different and how you need to assess these players, particularly younger players, before you get them in traditional power movement routines. And it just was like, well, we train the Olympic way, we do Olympic lifts. And I was like, that's fine, you can do that. But when you back squat a 135-pound golfer who has never learned to back squat, you need to make sure that their ankles aren't rolling in, that their knees aren't flaring out, that one hip isn't dropped, or you're going to have a lot of issues injury-wise. And years went by, and then after the Titleist Performance Institute got started and we started getting more and more certifications and interest among professional trainers, I'd go back and the tennis strength coach would be like, we're using some of that. And then the next year I'd go back and we're using that with our shortstops. And then I'd go back and it would be the quarterback. And then now it's fully integrated. And Olympic lifts are not discouraged by any means in golf, but you got to be capable of handling the stress that goes along with that. And that comes back to not just the time in the gym, what you're doing on your own, the foam rolling. Now cold plunging has become the big topic of recovery. It's something all the time. On top of that, with nutrition, as you know, your body has to be able to handle the recovery.
Yeah, the recovery is a big thing these days, this day and age. It's all about really how you recover. And certainly as I know as I get older, like my workouts are, when I think about my workouts, I'm thinking about, am I recovered? I'm not I might change my workout that I thought I was going to do that day because I can see my tracker that tells me I'm not fully recovered from the last workout. So it's crazy all the tools you have at your disposal. We're going to come back to the professional game, but I do want to ask you about the juniors. You see a lot of junior golfers. So let's just say we've even got some parents that will be listening to this that have young junior golfers. What's important at the junior level to help alleviate problems later in life? What are you doing with juniors?
That's my passion. It has been my entire career. I think that the number one thing I would suggest is that allow your junior golfer to play other sports as long as they possibly can. And I say that in reality, a lot of junior golfers are now playing, 26 tournaments a year by age 13. So it becomes more and more difficult. But like you said, get a basketball, let them dribble, go shoot hoops, throw a ball, kick a ball. Soccer is a great cross-training sport for golf because we see probably 35% of the tour played soccer. Baseball, we're getting a lot of bigger, stronger, better athletes. We were talking about my friend Lucas Glover earlier, phenomenal baseball player. Dad played in the major leagues, et cetera. So, there's tendencies for throwing, hitting, and kicking sports to translate very well into golf. The second thing I would say is it's never too early to start. I worked with Morgan Pressel when she was 12 years old. I worked with a lot of elite juniors, both boys and girls, starting at a very young age. And the tendency we see is very similar to as the body ages. Girls are going to be really flexible and don't have a lot of speed. Boys shoot up quicker once they start growing, then they get stiff. And then I treated a kid this week who had some severe back injuries at 15, trying to work through that. So I would say, first and foremost, play other sports as long as you can or have another activity you like. And then secondly, make sure when you start that there's something comprehensive about it. I have a hard time with a lot of these speed-based programs where kids are just swinging a club as rapidly as they can. There's nothing wrong with that as long as their application is correct? Do you do that on days you work out? Do you do that on days after you practice? Is there any monitoring of that type of progression? So you're not just building speed without having stability. So kids learn to jump, pull up, push up, crunch, throw, and then you can start to specialize. But the athletes today, the junior athletes that I get are bigger, faster, stronger. Jackson Bird, who trains at Sea Island, Jonathan Bird's son, I mean, hits the golf ball 300, hits it further than his father. Just, he's going to make the junior Ryder Cup team. We have kids coming through here that are going to be elite, are going to college to be elite, but take it one step further. And if you have a youngster who plays other sports, get them into golf in some capacity. Get them fitted for clubs, make the investment in a couple lessons, because in the work world, at some point, you'll be able to magnify the value of that commitment tenfold by being able to play golf at a high level. It's just a fact. Business and golf is no longer the best kept secret in the locker room. It is out there, clinics and scrambles. If you can hit the golf ball far, you will always be invited, and you're probably going to close some business deals out there.
Yeah, it's amazing. And it is the thing is so many business deals and things have happened on golf courses over the years. I know I'm about to ask you a question that may be impossible to answer because so much has changed, and I know we've touched on some of this already, but as far as the professional game, how have you seen how you train players evolve? You've been doing this for 30 plus years. I know that's a hard question to answer in a shorter podcast. Like,
right.
We don't have enough time in a podcast to go through all this, but maybe just ever look back and say, oh my goodness, like, where have we gotten to? Like, from the toys and the tools that you have now to the feedback you can get via computers and work with a swing coach and see flaws. What's changed the most, do you feel?
I think the first thing that comes to mind is the ability to do a Zoom call with an athlete in Asia or in Europe on a Tuesday during a tournament week. I mean, that was impossible in the past. Getting FaceTime and communication with someone visually is so important in what we do in terms of visual feedback. I'd say that's number one. I never saw that. I mean, I remember taking Polaroid pictures of Lee Trevino and Gary Player, and the thing would come out of we thought we had this technology, this picture would come out, and then I'd take a Sharpie and we'd mark up, the exercises. And I mean, obviously I'm dating myself on that. The other thing I would say is the use of recovery specialists has changed tremendously. And a lot of those guys on tour are some of my peers and best friends, and I could name. I would be remiss to name any because I would forget a few, but the best of the best are currently we're assembling our Ryder Cup staff, and I've been fortunate to be involved with a lot of Ryder Cups, and the therapists, the chiropractors, the cross training guys, the strength coaches. It's all now a collective group and team, and we're doing and providing the best medical and recovery and training for the athletes at the highest level. And I got to say, of all the things and opportunities I've had, being a part of that team, being, working under Davis and Furyk and being with Freddie and I'm name dropping now, but the best of the best is thrilling. And, you can't replace that experience from a standpoint of what I can teach a younger player, how these guys warm up, what they do, how they interact with others, how they do their practice rounds, what they do afterwards, what they do in their workouts. And I guess that's probably the big three for me. This technology stuff is interesting. The fact that, obviously the machines are different and the way we train, for God's sake, I wrote the foreword for the first functional trainer in 1994. I mean, a functional trainer didn't exist. Now they had these arms that went up and down, and now they're everywhere, right? Just a lot of things have occurred, but it's all for the better. And, where does it end? Because it's such a global game now, right? I mean, you've got guys like Akshay, who grew up coming around here, who's on tour, never went to college. And, obviously a peer of his, Brian Harmon, who just won the Open Championship, was probably the greatest junior golfer at that time and probably could have gone pro right out of high school. But those opportunities didn't exist. And so I would say the best thing that I can tell you is that you can go anywhere. Anybody with any budget can go get proper help on bettering their game and creating a longevity in the game.
Yeah, I think the hardest thing is for people to decide which route to go and who to go to, because now there's just so much opportunity, out there, and making sure, that you're working with someone who is, I have to be honest. I mean, sometimes not necessarily at the level you're at, but I've seen some trainers who aren't the best. And I've seen them do some things in the gym with clients that frighten me, because you see the imbalance and they're doing squats with all these weights. So how does the junior and the mom out there and the dad what's the best way to find the right person? I mean, is it just probably trial and error, but is it reputation? I mean, word of mouth is popular, obviously.
Yeah, I mean, I think the number one thing that I would say is talk to your coach. If you're really aspiring to be, and again, this has all changed, because in the old days, I mean, even back as recently as Jim Furyk and other, I mean, even if you look at Xander, his dad's his coach, right? So there's still some of that, and there's nothing wrong with that. But those coaches are going to be pretty well informed on trainers or therapists or chiropractors who can help that student. I would go initially, because you got a team, right? But someone's got to be the head coach. And, I always say the parents are the owners of the team. So any of that investment they're making better be right. So, you go to the head coach and then you work down from there. If the trainer or therapist isn't working in conjunction with the coach, that can cause problems, because swing coaches are generally going to go in a direction that they see the student able to go, and it isn't as easy as grip changes. But and then you got the other extreme where you have guys like my friend Mark Blackburn and Todd Anderson and Justin Parsons, who rely heavily on us, almost to the point where we're the offensive coordinator and we're trying to create where this athlete can go. So I think there's always going to be some opportunity to find a good person in your area. The Titleist Performance Institute, which I've been a founding member of, and actually have been fortunate enough to be in the Hall of Fame for that. Hard to believe. I don't even know what that means. But, Greg Rose, Dave Phillips, they're great. And they created on their app on mytpi.com. You can go on, type in your zip code, and every person in your area will come up, whether they're medical, professional, fitness, or trainer. So that's a great starting point.
That's a great thing. Yeah.
Yeah. And also, don't be afraid to experiment with the YouTube channel a little bit. It doesn't have to be Instagram worthy to be good. We block 3 different capacities. We say you've got to have a standard warm up. That's what people do before they hit balls in practice. That's a big missing link in junior golf. Most kids don't. They warm up on the range, and that's not effective. So that can be your foam rolling, your tubing, your static stretching, your jumping. Then you get into the kind of the functional motion, which would be more kettlebell work and swings and squats and step ups and single leg squats. And then you've got your power component, right? So I would say you can't go to step 2 without perfecting step 1. You can't go to step 3 without being really efficient at 1 and 2. And what I talk to people all the time is why wouldn't you mimic what the best players in the world do, right?
100%.
Wouldn't you go out there and say, I want to beat Dustin Johnson, I want to beat Brooks Koepka? And I've been fortunate enough to spend time with both those guys and work with them on a lot of different capacities of their fitness and talk to them about it. And you kind of want to mimic that type of athlete who's won majors, who's been successful for a long period of time. That information's out there. You can find it. Now, it doesn't mean you can do what Brooks did. As I saw him as a freshman at Florida State doing 80-pound incline dumbbell presses. That's uncanny. I mean, it's unheard. And Dustin Johnson broad jumps 10 feet in golf spikes and pants. I mean, that's like NBA quality, 80 percentile testing models. But if you have a kid who's a super athlete who's totally dedicated to it, what you do is you surround them by the best you can afford, and then you slowly integrate some outside consulting. Like we do that here at Sea Island, right? We are more like the Cleveland Clinic than we are. We have a local junior-based program, but for the most part, people come in for 3 days, 2 days, 4 days. They get their clubs checked with Craig Allen and his staff. They do work with Dr. Mo on their mental side. And get their practice planning. We have unbelievable short game, putting experts here, putter fitting, full swing. So, those things should then go back to the youngsters, young players' hometown, and those should be implemented along with what the local coach sees.
Yeah, and I think, I will link also that resource that you named, for myTPI.com. I'll link the resources for that in the show notes so that if people listen, they can find those things. I know that people are chomping at the bit because you mentioned the Ryder Cup, and I do want to talk about your role with that team. First of all, you get to go to Italy. I'm so jealous. I'm jealous.
I'm going twice.
I know, because you get one ahead of time.
Yeah, we're going for a practice round. Actually, on the phone with Davis and Zach both today. We're changing things up. I gotta be honest with you. Success through failure is kind of what we've tried to do. We got our fingers crossed. We have not had a victory in Europe in over 30. It'll be 30 years.
I mean, the Davis is the last person to make a putt to win in Europe. And he was a rookie. Yeah. It was a Ryder Cup rookie. It's crazy when you think about
Constantino Rocca, right? Is that
who
he beat?
It's crazy when you think about it.
Yeah, and it's not fun getting beat over there, just like they don't like to get beat over here. Analytics has become a massive part of it. We were having a conversation earlier, not to reveal anything because I don't know anything. I just have suspicions. But analytics become a very big factor in this. And your common golf fans don't really understand that it is a team game. There's only 12 singles matches, right? And those singles matches are very random because, we put out who we think we should go out and they put out who they should go out, and we're trying to predict what's going on either. But those are the only real singles matches of the whole event. The rest is who matches up in alternate shot, who matches up in four balls. Foursomes and four balls are very unique, and different. I've been a part of a bunch of these things. And so anyway, we're going to make sure our gyms are set up. The players are going to play practice rounds. We've got meetings with their nutrition people. We've got our chefs going over there. But
that's what I think people don't know.
Yeah.
I don't think people understand that might be a 1 week competition. I mean, you're playing for 3 days, but you're preparing for this with the gyms. The workouts are so important to players these days, and the nutrition that goes into that. So give people a sense of how big of a deal this is, because I've seen it evolve over the years. It went from just worrying about peanut butter and jelly, to now it's a thing. Like, this is a big deal to the players.
Oh, big. And the caddies and the caddies' wives and the players' wives and the captains. No, it's for a person like Zach Johnson, for a person like Davis Love or Jim Furyk, for any of the captains that, obviously Azinger was one of the fundamental guys in getting this thing back on track with the pod system. And it's a full commitment from those high level athletes that they give. So what ended up happening, I think, that's been really good is a bunch of the players got together a few years ago and said, there's a lot of entertaining going on, and there's a lot of people we don't know around. How can we if we were at any other major, we'd be in our tight knit group.
Yeah, shrinking the bubble. You got to shrink the bubble.
And so I think what ended up happening is that became apparent, and it's even become more apparent because COVID shut everything down at Whistling Straits. I mean, we were literally, it was us, and I think the players really enjoyed that, and so that's a whole nother story for another day. But what goes on essentially is in between President's Cups and Ryder Cups, we're constantly working on site locations. I mean, obviously, Kerry Haig and his staff at the PGA of America do an incredible job. I mean, I'm fortunate. I spent a lot of my career working down doing education for them and et cetera. But it's a whole process. So, you got food allergies, you got players who are doing certain kind of dieting that, you need to take those things there. You can't just show up and expect to have your favorite granola in the local store or your snack bar. So we have lists, we go through them comprehensively, we take the food we need. There are chefs that are preparing food. What we found out is Freddie Couples is really a unique guy in terms of insightful communication with the players, and we're fortunate to have him again being a part of the team. And he said players don't like to eat food out of trays. buffet food is not, now going back forever at every tour event, basically for historically, players went in after they played or practiced and ate food out of trays. I mean, that's just what happened. Most people were grateful for that. But a lot of the players today have chefs that travel with them. And I know this sounds unique. We kind of turned that corner, and it's all budgetary, just because you want it doesn't mean you do it, and we've never done it. So getting that changed, having access to not only a gym at the hotel that's not the hotel gym, our gym is built inside of our team rooms, full gym, training tables. We've got a grab and go station on the player floor of all snacks, every bar, everything you want, anytime, day or night. It's there. Prep work, hot tubs, cold plunges. Then that's just at the hotel. And then you go to the course, and then you got a gym there, you got training table, you got all those things. So I could talk for hours about it because I spent a lot of my time working with the great people at the PGA, and it's really changed the game. Because I got to be honest with you, the PGA of America had set a precedent based upon feedback from not only the players but the captains to do this, to elevate this. And we did it. It started to get better. It got better, and now we're like in a phenomenal position. I would say, knock on wood. We know what we want. We know what we do. But now, believe it or not, with the last President's Cup, the PGA Tour wants to. You can't do it for one and not do it for another, right? Like, one's the Super Bowl. You don't want one to be like the NFC playoffs or the NFC Championship. So now we're juggling these two events because, face it, the players are playing for their country. There's an enormous amount of pride. They're really only getting compensated for their own foundations. So at the end of the day, yes, they are receiving whatever for that. And it's great. And everyone's great from the standpoint of receiving it and distributing their money. But that's not why they're playing. A week off in the off season versus striving. I mean, they'll tell you, Justin Thomas just said a couple of weeks ago, the playoffs are so important to him, but to make a Ryder Cup team fully trumps.
Yeah, Lucas said it too this week. He said they asked him to choose between the two, and he said, "I have to say Ryder Cup." So it's a thing. It's a big deal to these guys. It's the greatest
thing. I mean, it's not what you would perceive to be the Major League Baseball All-Star Game. It's not that at all. If you took the Major League All-Star Game and you said, would you rather make an All-Star team or would you rather play in a World Series? There's guys who would say, I'd give up my Hall of Fame ring to win a World Series. Right, in baseball.
100%.
There's guys who would say to win a Super Bowl versus being an All-Pro or whatever. In golf, I can't tell you you've got guys who, when they put that Team USA bag, they forget, they don't even know. These are guys who play 30 events a year, and they don't have extra spikes. Things that you would never anticipate. They kind of forget. And I love it because they're all my buddies and I've known them all for a long time, and I'm so proud to be a part of it. And part of the role that I play is just making sure there's a comfort level in that locker room with the communications between the captains and the players, and when they're to go out on the range and what the lineups are, making sure that these guys know that someone that they've seen there and have been around is going to be able to take care of whatever it is they need to. And I remember when TrackMan became popular, and I think we were in Medina or whatever, and maybe it was the next one. It might have been a Hazeltine. I can't remember. But, Austin Johnson, he's like, where's Dustin's TrackMan? What do you mean, where's his TrackMan? Well, they just walked off the range, but there's no access. So, I'm sprinting out there to get that, and Patrick Reed had lost a spike, so we're trying to get that out on 17. And, someone lost a key to a cart. It was sitting in the middle of you can't let the captains and the players know that there's turmoil.
We could all write our own books, I feel like, with the behind-the-scenes stuff.
Yeah, I don't want to reveal too much stuff.
It is crazy. It is intense. I mean, I know some of the events that I will always remember the most in my career are Ryder Cups, and I know that the intensity's out there, but I also know we have a lot of fun out there when we're all hanging out. I also know that the peanut butter and jellies will still be important no matter what else happens.
They'll be out there. What people don't realize is as much as we prepare and the amount of food and things we have in stations, in golf carts, So we put out stations and we have food on golf carts, but you also need certain other things like chapstick and eye drops and Benadryl. I mean, like these things that most of these players would have access to, you get in a match and you just don't know where it is or don't have it, especially when you're in a foreign country. But I always talk about the Notah Begay rule, and Notah will love this. He had Tiger when Tiger was the assistant. I was with them. Tiger was assistant captain. And by the way, phenomenal, unbelievable preparation that guy does. He's amazing. And Notah lost the key, got out of the cart in the middle of the 13th fairway, couldn't find the cart. So now we have a Notah Begay rule. We have a backup set of keys in every cart. So, it's just, things that you just, you can't predict, can't project. And it's all in good fun. But more importantly, there's nothing like the winning locker room ever in any sport. And that's the best of the best. And, at the end of that, after the celebration, the team that won greets the team that lost. And there you go. I mean, the stories can't be told any more than that. It's just an all-night good time, a lot of camaraderie. And, you want to beat your opponent, but at the end of the day, these guys, most of them are playing against each other the next week. So it is definitely one of the greatest things. And by the way, I have to say, been to a number of them, both in the United States and in Europe, and the fans, it's electric. I mean, it's probably the hardest sporting event to watch because you only have 4 matches, right, on a big golf course. So unless you're there earlier, nowhere to go, right? And the first tee everyone sees, it's jubilation and everything's crazy. And on the course, you're waiting to see a shot. You may only see half a dozen shots, but no one leaves, right? You're there, you're locked in. If it's Friday, you're watching the morning session, you're, having a pop or whatever, getting a sandwich, and you're back out there.
There are definitely a couple pops.
And the costumes, and obviously I'm being redundant with some of the things. But yeah, it's exciting. We're thrilled. It's basically a month away now. And we're feeling pretty good about it. The team thing's bringing a lot of interest to it. A lot of the speculation we've discussed, who should be picked, who should be left off. Everyone has a personal opinion. Quite frankly, Zach will do his best to assemble a great team that we hope can represent our country and hopefully bring that cup, keep it, and that's what we're all gunning for.
Yeah, and I'm big fans of all those guys, and I'm certainly I won't be at this Ryder Cup, which will be sad, but I will be watching, and I'm certainly rooting for Zach and the guys, and so it should be a fun competition. I know I want to circle back to one last thing that you brought up earlier. We talked about the speed and the power, and there was a good time frame of in the last 4 or 5 years where we hear about this all the time. Guys are talking about Matt Fitzpatrick wins. We were talking about the speed and the power. The speed and the power that's going on in this game, is it detrimental to some? Because you heard Rory say he made a mistake when he chased the speed. Like, how do you know the line for that? How do you bring that into training with players?
When I started in this game, the technology as it related to the equipment was slowly evolving. But people who were teaching at the time, some of my greatest mentors, guys like Jim Flick and Toski and those guys, weren't even using camera. They were using their eyes. So what happened was the technology got a little bit better, which kind of forced players who were trying to hit the ball farther to analyze their physical fitness. And Jack Nicklaus started this tour called the Golden Bear Tour. And that was in the early to mid 90s. And it brought a couple hundred players from all around the world together. And it was the first time really where we had young athletes in golf that could put on speed and strength because it was a 12 tournament tour. And we were able to train these guys, assess these guys, get a ton of data back. Most of them, at the time, no one hit the ball over 300 yards. I mean, Davis was the longest hitter, and he was hitting a persimmon into the 90s. So what ended up happening is Ely Callaway obviously came up with a concept, a bigger face. To catch up with that, the balls got better. Obviously, a lot of equipment manufacturers put a lot of energy and money and investment into that. Shoes became better. Remember, there was a time where wearing a golf shoe out of a box was a no-no because your feet were, nothing was customized and nothing was built athletically. So that's kind of the history of it. As that evolved and the tours got better and the younger players came out, and I remember being told, because I started primarily with the Champions Tour guys, and I had a lot of really good players. I remember being told no one peaks in golf until they're 30, 34 years old on the PGA Tour. And I thought to myself, that's kind of ridiculous, because if you think about other sports, hockey players are playing in the NHL at 20, and Major League Baseball players, some guys are coming up early and all. So I guess what ended up happening was we were able, starting around the late 90s, we were able to start assessing college players, and we were starting to say, this power and strength thing is good as long as there's mobility. And the things we talked about early, symmetry, mobility. But what kind of power do we need? We need to be able to jump as far as we can. We need to be able to stabilize on one leg and create transitional power. We need to be able to throw effectively. And so that started the whole process of gaining more and more speed. But then it evolved into a crazy kind of analogy, because there was a study done that basically all this current technology for speed was based off. Padraig Harrington, before he won any majors, went to TPI. I happened to be out there, and he wanted to hit the ball further. So they kind of came up with a technology where they basically gave him a 7-iron that was his standard 7-iron, and then a heavier 7-iron, 20% heavier, and then like a junior club almost whippy shaft. So how do you get more speed? You, like any other sport, you swing with your club, and you swing with a heavier club, then you swing with a lighter club, and then you swing. And so there was a system that was created, and what we ended up finding out is not only that, you need to be able to swing opposite too. So if you're right-handed, you should be swinging left-handed. Well, what happens if we step and hold the lag and then swing? Well, all these speeds became measurable. So we were seeing this improvement, and from that research early on, what we found is there is a definitive way to gain speed. How much speed do you want to gain? How much speed can you gain until you get injured, right? How much speed can you gain until it becomes ineffective and the ball starts going in different directions? So that's where 3D technology comes in, and we have a lot of data capture and things where people are trying to add speed in the off season. And there's a system called Stack System, which we use primarily. It also records your speed, but gives you a plan. So you're not just randomly out there swinging as fast as you can. So this will continue to improve. I think it's worthwhile for any recreational golfer, for that matter, to get involved in that. But then it comes down to what's your coach say? Do you need to do that before you practice? Do you need to do it after? How many swings do you make? Do you need to do it after a warm-up? Do you need to do it at the end? So everyone's kind of individualized. And I know this is a long explanation, but it's out there. It should be part of that whole balance, right? So you got your warm-up, you got your functional work, you've got your power work, and then you got your speed training. And as long as that is a balanced, it's like a beach ball, right? Beach ball's light, and then all of a sudden the wind blows and it's gone. So you want to have that balance. You want to make sure that it's symmetrical, and everything you're doing is building from the center out. And so for kids, just be careful that speed isn't changing your technique, because to swing fast, altering your path and plane is not necessarily a good thing. And also, there are players like you mentioned, Matthew, who could do it prior to and during tournament weeks. I've got players I work with who only do it in the off season or on an off week. I got other players who don't want to know anything about the speed, because the technology that the Golf Channel has with TrackMan, they say that the speed on course during play is 15, 18, 16, 10% greater during tournament play than they can generate. So there's definitely variables out there. And it also comes down to, are you a power player or a speed player? Bryson, more power to the guy. I mean, he did everything he thought was right. He ended up gaining that distance and winning, and then he ended up injuring himself. He had a wrist injury that was pretty bad. And so, you can use 1,000 different stories, but every individual should figure out exactly where that fits. And that goes back to consulting your PGA instructor. What's too much? What's enough? Speed's going to progress for juniors. they go from second gear to third gear to fourth gear to fifth gear. Those lucky enough to get to sixth gear probably don't need to be in seventh, right? I saw a stat today. It was great. Rory McIlroy, from 2010, his ball speed was 171.9, and today it's 184.1. So he gained 12 miles an hour of ball speed over the course of his career. He's getting older. I see his workouts. They're intense, but it's not like he's a power lifter. He does intense training during tournament weeks, but it's not like he's going out there trying to hit the ball far. He has an unbelievable genetic matchup and great talent and work ethic and all those things, enviable. But he's also hypermobile, and he's got it all, right? I mean, he's the perfect 5'9" golfing machine. Where, you got a guy with long levers like Dustin Johnson, who just is able to create a lot of width and arc in his golf swing and generate speed almost more naturally without trying to hit it far. So it's whatever the player needs to do, however they want to do it. They need to really take a look at their plan, their platform, try to do it over a 6 to 12 week period of time and reevaluate.
Yeah, no, that was a great explanation. I learned a lot from that, which I learn from you all the time. And, that's one of the reasons why I have you on here. And the whole theory of the podcast is to have people on that I've been blessed to have, in my life and have, and learn from. So I know when I was becoming a trainer, you would always talk to me about things, and I always appreciated that. I do, before we let you go, because I know I've probably kept you longer than you have time for, but I want you to give, to have the ability to toot your own horn here and what you guys do at Sea Island. I know we've touched on a lot of points on the things that you do at this performance center. For the folks who aren't watching on video, they wouldn't get to see this, but even the people who are watching on video, if I could just turn the camera around and let you see what we're looking at. This is an incredible facility. And I think what goes on here is like no other place on the planet. So I want to just give you the chance to, to definitely talk about what goes on here beyond what maybe you've already told us.
Well, I'll tell you, it's truly a remarkable place in the world because it's old school and yet it's futuristic. There's a lot of culture here. It's a very servant-oriented facility, and Sea Island itself, it's the only property in the United States with 4 or 5-star rankings, maybe in the world. But it was built on a golf foundation. So our golf courses were built in 1928, and since then we've added others and renovated, and we host a PGA Tour event here every year. But from day one, the culture of Sea Island was based upon the fact that generations of people came here to learn and learn how to play golf and enjoy the hospitality and obviously the food and all those things. And we do have a phenomenal beach club and a 5-star hotel and unbelievable things. But when they built this facility, people were on a boat just off the coast right here where we are off our driving range, and they'd ferry them over and they'd go play golf. So we never lost track of our history from that standpoint. The lodge here has been amazing. And the instructional staff historically, it's bar none some of the greatest ever. Obviously Davis's father and Jack Lumpkin, we're sitting in the Jack Lumpkin Library, Todd Anderson, and now Justin Parson and his staff. It's special. We work together. It's like being in a fantasy land for golf, but it's real. The people are real. The relationships are real. We're fortunate. It doesn't take a situation where we're so dependent on hour after hour after hour that we can't sit back and build relationships. And I think that's what makes it special. And I can't tell you. This morning I had a person who couldn't come for whatever reason. They were out playing golf, and I just went back and chipped for 45 minutes. And I'm like, I've been here 20 years, and I'm thinking to myself, this is unbelievable. The grass is perfect. The greens are perfect. I'm hitting perfect golf balls off a perfect surface with a great club, So anyone can feel like they're a pro. And that was always Davis's dad's philosophy, is we need to treat every player that comes here, regardless of ability, like they're on the PGA Tour for that hour, for that day, for that week, for that month, or whatever. And I think we try to do that. And that's why I don't know if you can find a person in my travels, I have never found a person who, when they say, you work at Sea Island, they don't go, that is one of my favorite places on the planet. I love Sea Island. Sea Island is the greatest, And we almost blush and say, yeah, we're pretty fortunate. This is what we do. This is where we're at. But there's a passion that comes along with that, and also a responsibility. And it's every day, all day. You try to do your best, and then you get up and do it again tomorrow in the best place on the planet. So I appreciate you having me on. And obviously, I'm very proud of the things we've done here, the accomplishments we've had, and the success. But it couldn't have happened without the Anschutz family and the Jones family and people like Mac Barnhart and Jimmy Johnson and Jeremy Elliott, and those are the agents that represent the players around here, and the vision that was here and created that was fulfilling basically Davis Loves Fowler's vision, which is we want to create the best environment that simulates a tour event every day of the year. And that's what we do.
And for sure. I mean, I always feel like, I don't get to practice. Certainly don't get to play a lot of golf, but I don't get to practice. And when I'm here, I'm like I said to my dad today, if it wasn't so hot, I think I'd be hitting balls over here after we were done. Because we had already played golf today,
right.
But I was like, I just always want to practice when I'm here. So we will put in the show notes.
Go in the simulator or go out and work on the putting course.
And I love the putting course too.
It is hot in the summer. It's we kind of take pride in it. I know it's time to go, but whatever season you go and come here, there's always something for everyone. And the thing about it is, late afternoon right now, the tide's going out probably. And if you went out right now, you could walk 9 holes, carry your own bag, and it is not hotter than any place else, If you're trying to go out anywhere at 12 o'clock in the middle of the summer, I do those camps. We have junior camps. It is hot. But you stay hydrated and you learn, you weather it. But in the winter, there's not a day you can't play. But what's nice about this is, and I lived in Jupiter, Florida. I love Jupiter, Florida. It's a great foundational place for me, and a lot of pros live there. But I like putting a sweater on in the winter, and I like going outside where the wind's blowing. So, you find your spots. And I got to tell you, in summary, that's why it's probably the most popular. At one point, was one of the most popular third home destinations in the world. People lived in Chicago and Naples or Long Island and South Florida, but a lot of that travels right here through St. Simons and Sea Island. Yeah,
it's just, it's one of my favorite places. So of course, my first idea is let's take this thing on location and go to Sea Island. Like, why wouldn't I do that? That wouldn't be me. That wouldn't be me if I didn't do that. Right. But how can folks reach out to you, or what's the best way to? I know you're not a social media guy. You're not out there.
I don't do much of it.
So how do you want people to follow you or reach out to even find out how to work with you guys at Sea Island?
I get a lot of. I do have a webpage. And it's just Randy Myers Golf. So if you search Randy Myers Golf, first thing that'll come up is the stretching pole. But you can get the training aids we use with our tour players. There's also video tips and highlights of that. I got to tell you, it's pretty interesting. I do like social media. I don't like to participate in it because someone created an alternate account of mine, and it made me I'm so old school. It made me so mad that they were sending out things about cryptocurrency. And people were calling me like, what are you talking? I'm like, that's it. I'm done. So I banned myself from it for a while. I'll go back. But the point is, they can always go to my website and just look up Randy Myers Golf and, buy something or buy a book. I've got a book that's been out. If you don't want to go on there, you can go on Amazon, buy my book. It's called Fit for Golf, Fit for Life. And it's a foundational book. If you have a trainer, buy it, give it to your trainer. If you have a husband that's complaining they don't hit it anywhere, buy my book. Give it to him as a gift. Give it to your wife if she doesn't hit it far enough, whatever those things. But it breaks down all those things we talked about today: assessment, functional training, strength training, speed training's in there, nutrition. It's been out. It's third production, whatever you call it, third edition now. So it's been good.
It's a great book. It's a great book.
It's a good coffee table read.
Yes.
If you don't do anything, it gives you where to start. And if you're like, the CrossFit king, I can still show you there's things you're missing from the golf perspective. So
awesome. Well, Randy, thank you for joining us.
I hope I didn't talk too long today.
That's a wrap for this episode of Ripple Effect Connection. We hope you enjoyed our discussion on golf and fitness. I know that anyone looking to improve their ability to play this wonderful game got some great tips. So a big thank you to Randy Myers for joining us, and oh, by the way, go USA. Now that you've been inspired, here's my call to action for you. Take a moment to reflect on the insights and wisdom Randy shared. How can you apply these lessons to your own health, well-being, and fitness? If you're looking to start a new routine, start slow. You can't do 20 push-ups if you can't do one. And think about enlisting the services of a personal trainer to find the workout that's right for you and your body. It's such an important step. I'd love to hear from you. So connect with me on social media and let me know what resonated with you. Reach out on Instagram @WholeHealthChristy, and I'm happy to continue the conversation. You can also visit my website, ChristyHugic.com, and all the podcast episodes have full show notes on ChristyHugic.com/podcast. Next, spread the inspiration. If you can, take the time to like, follow, review, and share this podcast with others who may benefit from these stories. Stay tuned for the next episode of Ripple Effect Connection. Let's create waves of change together.